Hi,
Brilliant.
everybody. I'm here with Daniel Priestley, um, best-selling author of 4 books, founder of Dent Global, and the creator of the Key Personal Influence program. Um, Daniel's been using his book to grow his business since before we were even doing publishing. He's been working with books and using them to grow leads, to sell for him, to go out there and outreach for his businesses. And one thing I remember Daniel saying to me was, he said, I give so many books away. How can you possibly be still sending me royalty checks? Because I've given as many books away as I can. So I don't know anybody that gives more books away than Daniel, as a deliberate lead generation tactic and strategy. And so I wanted to get him on and kind of grill him about the process, because I know he's been giving books away. So hi, Daniel. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell me a bit more about the idea of the book, because you've got this great way you position what the book should be doing for your business in terms of a sales tool.
Yeah, exactly. So the old thinking around authors is that authors have a job, which is to sell books. As far as the publishing industry is concerned, authors should be out there selling books. And when you're an entrepreneur, you think to yourself, well, actually, I don't want to be running around selling books. I've got a whole business that I want to be focused on. What I want is a book to be running around selling me. So the old paradigm is authors sell books. The new paradigm is books sell authors. And I remember in 2006, I first arrived in the UK and I wanted to build my network really fast and I wanted to grow a fast growth business. So I got this membership at a private members club called Adam Street. And I used to sit down there and probably do 5 face-to-face meetings every single day. And I'd do, other work in between my meetings, but I would have these face-to-face meetings all the time. And I found that I was saying the same thing over and over and over again. I was telling the same stories and I was explaining what we do in the same sort of terms, and I would reference the same analogies. And I kind of got in the habit of, like, a meeting would kind of cover sort of certain key points to explain our business and what we do and the vision. And at the end of the day, I would always clear the coffee bill, and always it was about £40. So roughly speaking, I would always buy myself and my guest a tea or a coffee. At a members club, that was about £3 per person. So it was about £6 per meeting. And I'd have 5 meetings and that would be £30, £40, depending if we got some lunch or something like that as well. But at the end of the day, I would always end up spending £30-40 after doing a day of meetings and saying the same thing over and over and over again. And then at one point I thought to myself, actually, if I put all of these stories into a book, and if it costs me about the same as a cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee to send a book out, that would be a huge leverage of time. Provided I send 5 or 6 or 7 books out per day, it's exactly the same as going and meeting 5 or 6 or 7 people per day. And the truth is, when you do meet 5 or 6, 7 people a day, quite a lot of meetings go nowhere, like absolutely nowhere. You have a chat and nothing happens. So, I thought to myself, well, there's really no difference if I send out 5 or 6 books and 4 of them don't read the book, and one person reads half it and one person reads all of it and loves it. It's like, great. Well, that's kind of, roughly speaking, the same as doing all these coffee meetings without having any of my time involved. So for me, I just kind of, I guess as an entrepreneur, I saw the book as something very different to how a traditional author might see a book.
Fantastic. And I remember you once explaining how this could equate to the equivalent of a business development manager. So if you were to kind of do the numbers on it, not just in terms of the cost, but in terms of the revenue generated, you now give away books deliberately, and your kind of cost per acquisition.
Yeah.
What are the kind of numbers, conversions that you get longer term from giving books away strategically?
I know that roughly speaking, for every 1,000 books we give away, we do something like 75,000 to £100,000 worth of business.
Wow.
So the trick is to try and give away 1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So
to do a Grant Cardone, that's a 75x on
yeah,
the spend of the book.
yeah, it's pretty good. It's basically we if you look at a business development manager, let's say someone sticks around for 2 years, costs you about £8,000 to recruit them, about £7,000 or £8,000 to train them. So there's your first 15 grand. And then you might pay them a salary of 40,000, plus you've got to give them materials and things anyway, computer and all that sort of stuff. So pretty much in year one, you're going to spend 55, 60,000. In year two, you're going to spend 40 to 50,000, and then they're going to leave. And then you're going to have to begin the process all again.
Yeah.
So as soon as you get your head around the fact that people are, that's what people cost, you start thinking to yourself, well, actually, that's an awful lot of books you could give away. For 55,000 per year, you can give a lot of books away.
Yeah, yeah.
So realistically, you just start thinking, well, what's cool is if I get the book right, then that will be an asset in the business that never ever leaves.
Yeah. And in terms of the book does a great outreach job, but I know you've got a sales process and you've got a real belief in making sure there's a proper systemized follower.
we have a great sales process, but the only people we end up talking to now are people typically who have read the book, who understand the big picture of what we do. They understand the why, they understand the value, and then they just want to talk about the fine point. They just want to kind of like talk about, how does it work for me and how do I apply it? They're not trying to worry about us. They're just trying to worry about themselves. How they're wondering, how would I apply this, and would it work for me too? So, so it's a much different sales call. The salespeople don't feel like they have to sell our company to someone who's already read the book.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously, because you track all this stuff, where they came from, what assets they've already seen from within the business. That gives me another question. Like, lots of people, when they think I'm going to use my book as a lead gen, will do some kind of offer where it's kind of self-liquidating, and they'll say like, we'll charge them just post and packing, or we'll cover the cost of the book. I know, because we discussed this, you just started giving the book away like freely with no ask in terms of money. How did that work out, and what were you linking it with? Because I know you had another tool. What were you linking it with to make sure that sales process continued?
Yeah, so the key tool that we link it with is a scorecard. So inside the book, it has a 5-step methodology. And then before it reveals the 5-step methodology, it says, before we go through and explain the 5 steps, why don't you take this scorecard so you know your starting point, and then we can look at how we develop and build you in each of the 5 areas. And basically, and then at the end of the book, it says, if you haven't done so already, take the scorecard as a next step. So about 2 or 3 times through the book, it actually mentions, if you've taken the scorecard, you'll know your own score.
Yeah.
And that's not by accident. I really want people to take the scorecard, because if people read the book and then take the scorecard, A, they've read that content. B, they've signaled their interest to us and let us know, I'm reading the book currently. And then we also know exactly how they scored. So if we talk to someone on the phone and then say, hey, look, you got a really strong score for pitch, low score for published, low score for product, why don't we work on those 2 areas especially? And people are straight away talking to us about how they could improve those areas. So it's a very powerful conversation. So the book leads perfectly into the scorecard. The scorecard is essentially an online questionnaire, yes, no questions, and then it produces a customized PDF. And we use a piece of software called scoreapp.com. And then basically that allows the content to turn into data and leads.
I'll put that link in the comments for everybody. Also, I'd say, like, if you want to see an example of Daniel's scorecard, it's scorecard.keypersonofinfluence.com. If you go there, you can fill in the KPI scorecard.
Yeah, but be careful.
It's so cool.
If you do that, you'll then have an example of a sales call calling you as pretty soon as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And maybe people following you around the web with an ad, because I know it's all lined up. And so just on that, giving the book away without worrying about the post and packing kind of element, from your point of view, is it because you've got a kind of a higher value sell, and so the sales process is different, rather than a direct kind of one-time offer upsell to a mini course or something? What was your
Yeah, so because we have a decent business on the back end, it makes financial sense for us to, really just assume if someone wants to give their time to read a book. I mean, realistically, we sell to a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs who have very valuable time. So if a CEO is willing to spend 5 hours reading a book, that's probably £2,000 worth of their time.
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to send them a copy of the book if they're willing to invest £2,000 of their time to reading a book. I'm more than willing to send them a book.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So,
I've got a
but
question here. I
mind you,
thought what I do, Daniel. I've got the Facebook Live up as well. So I just thought I'd quickly run through and see if there's any questions. I've
great.
got a really good one from Mary Gregory, and I'd be interested in this. How do you know it's the book that was responsible for the revenue?
Well, because we do ask people, how did you hear about us? And the most common answer is the book. And if someone just simply comes through the front end of our business and they email us, we often will say, have you read the book? And if the answer is no, we'll immediately just send them a copy of the book as well. So even in situations where we haven't, someone's found us through a different way, we always make sure the book is part of the process.
Fantastic. And I mean, I've seen that. So actually keeping tabs on where it's come from is good, but also the opportunity to send a book as well. And as you were saying earlier, you do that because you know they're going to get a pitch perfect representation of the value.
Yeah, here's an interesting one. When we were launching in Australia, we were looking for speakers, and I reached out to a few people who were speakers in Australia. And one particular guy sent me 9 books. He'd written 9 books, and in the post arrived all 9 books, and they were all signed, and they arrived at this big stack. And I thought, wow, that is so incredible. That's generous. And then I start looking through the books, and I start seeing how much great content. And there was one book in particular that kind of talked through his story and how he'd had a very troubled upbringing, very difficult upbringing. I was like, wow, that's an incredible story. And I kind of felt a connection of like, oh, wow, that's really powerful. And anyway, we ended up hiring him as one of our speakers. And we ended up basically doing something with him every single month for 5 years. So, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of speaking fees. And it's like, yeah, okay, he sent me 9 books to start with. And, it's probably, let's say that was $100 commitment all in with postage and all of that sort of stuff. But realistically, it did translate in that case to more than $500,000 worth of work.
Yeah, amazing. And that happens all the time. So me and Lucy are often sharing stories where our authors say to us, like, you'll never guess what happened. And then the punchline is always, it was all because of the book. I sent them a book. So we do that a lot. I'm kind of going through, just seeing if anybody else has asked any questions. But one thing I want to bring it back to is the fact you give so many books away, but people still buy your books. And I've got a feeling I know why. And I'm going to suggest that. And then I'd like to know what you think. But I think what happens is we can't throw books away. It's not like a brochure. We're just conditioned to give books to somebody else as a gift of value, even if it's not for us right now. We're like, I'll give that to somebody else. Or sometimes you love it so much, you're like, I'm going to gift it to somebody else. I'll get another one.
It's sacrilege to throw a book away. There's no, the idea of throwing a book in the bin is just a horrible idea. But look, I think it's as simple as that. People read my books, and then, it's one of those things where you're talking to someone who you know and you say, I'm reading a good book at the moment. And you kind of, I'm reading a book at the moment that I've told at least 3 or 4 people about. So, I'm reading this book called Subscribed, and it's by an interesting entrepreneur in New York. And I heard about it because I was looking at Oversubscribed, one of my books, and then it had this book called Subscribed. And I'm like, that's funny. So I just started reading it. I started listening to it. And then I've spoken to Steve about it. I've spoken to Glenn about it. I've said, oh, you should read this book. And I've probably told 3 or 4 people, spoke to Jake about it. I've told 3 or 4 people about this particular book. And then they, of course, it's £10. So they go online and they buy themselves the book. So I think it's just as simple as I give away enough books, and then pretty much the people reading them tell 1 or 2 people each, and away it goes. Because I do sell a lot of books. The more books I've given away, the more I sell.
Yeah, I think that's the point. More people holding it. It's like you say about being oversubscribed. People want to buy what other people are buying, not what you're selling. And if they say everybody else, why all these people got this book, and you've done that a bit in advance, like without worrying about trying to sell by Amazon and wait for that kind of sales to happen for you. You've made sure the right people get the book.
You got to remember that my background was having coffee meetings. So for me, the book is really simple. I just think about it as a coffee meeting. if I would meet that person for coffee, like theoretically, if I had all the time in the world, if my diary was always wide open, would I theoretically meet that person and have a cup of coffee with them? And would I pick up the cup of coffee? If the answer is yes, then send them a book. Because I don't have time to meet everyone.
Yeah.
I can't physically meet 1,000 people per year, therefore, or per month. So therefore, send 1,000 books a month.
Yeah. And that's pretty much, that was the number you were saying. It's about that many books that you've been sending.
I try to send out about 1,000 a month. Yeah.
And in terms of like what's been going on at the moment with everybody being locked down, do you think that's an even more important reason to get a physical asset to people? Or
Do you know, we've been so fortunate because we've had these assets in creation for the last several years. And, in a time where you can't send people, in a time where you can't have a physical meeting with someone, it's been wonderful for us to be able to send, we're still sending out 1,000 books a month.
Yeah.
So we're still connecting with people, and the level of people actually reading the book has gone up because people have got time to read a book. So it's actually working well in our favor. It's tragic. A lot of people are, just don't have a business that works during these times, but we are so fortunate because we've got the books, the videos, the scorecards. Those things just keep working no matter what, so long as people have access to a phone or a computer, they can read a book, they can do a scorecard, they can watch a video online. And actually they can now work with us completely online as well. So actually, strangely, our revenue's up by almost 20% above where we thought it should be if COVID had not happened. Yeah. So rather than taking a dip, we've gone up.
That's awesome, because if people are waiting for this content, they need stuff, they want to learn and do stuff.
Exactly. The need is greater.
That's so cool. I suppose thinking about moving forward with the book, I think a lot of our authors, we haven't really been encouraging them to do a scorecard yet. So some of the books will be there and the principles are there. What would your first kind of tip be for how do you extract the value from the book and turn it into more of a question based?
So the scorecard really does make the book into a business tool. It means that rather than, like, if you don't have a scorecard in the book, it's like you're sending out a book and hoping that someone figures out what to do next. So like, for example, the book that I'm actually reading at the moment, this Subscribe book, it's not telling me to do anything. It's not telling me to interact with the author in any way. So even though I've told 3 or 4 people about it, the book has not said, hey, why don't you drop me an email and tell me what you've done? Or it hasn't said, fill in a scorecard, or it hasn't said, watch this video online or download these resources. None of that. So as far as the author knows, like right now, this moment, I'm really into this particular author, and I'm on the other side of the world, like really excited about what I'm reading. But next month, I'm going to be reading a different book. And the month after that, I'll read a different book. And a year from now, I'll have almost forgotten what I was reading in this book, Subscribe. Yeah. And I will have not actually signaled my interest in the book at that particular moment. So the scorecard is just a really powerful continuation of the book. And essentially, it's pretty easy. Most books, there's a key outcome that people want as a result of reading it. So if you read Key Person of Influence, you want to become a key person of influence. If you read Oversubscribed, you want to get your business oversubscribed. So the scorecard is essentially benchmarking, are you doing the right things to get to that outcome? Are you actually putting in place certain steps? So if you say, let's say it's a fitness book, and you say, all right, I want to get fit. So there's things like diet, exercise, sleep, clear goals, measuring performance. So there's the big 5 things that kind of relate to getting fit. So under each of those big 5 things, you can just ask 3 questions. Now you've got 15 questions, and then you can actually benchmark people and give them a score as to whether they're doing the right things in order to get the fitness goal. So it's a very simple way for people to make the content relatable to them. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, you're not just reading a book, you're actually relating that content to your own life. It's engaging. You're getting a starting point or a score, and then you can watch yourself improve. And basically, that is a very, very powerful way for people to engage and signal their interest. I'll go so far as to say I would not be giving away 1,000 books a month if I didn't have a scorecard in there. Because it would just, the metrics wouldn't, in a casino, the casino needs to have just that slightest edge in order to make the business work.
Yeah.
And if the casino is 52% likely to win and you're 48% likely to win, that actually can be a very successful business. But it needs that slight edge. And the thing that gives a book a slight edge is having a scorecard in it where people actually read the book, engage with it, do something with it. And that gives you that edge to basically very rapidly turn that into a great business tool that turns into clients.
The other thing that I'd say about the scorecard, because I remember before we were working together, Daniel, that you had this scorecard in place way back, before the app was available to make these things easy.
We spend
and
about
I'm filling it in thinking this is
£8,000.
the best thing ever, because what happens is you actually get a PDF as well, so you don't just get, it's not just a score and you like, there's your score, like you see some of these quizzes. You get this PDF that gets emailed to you. You can read through it at your leisure. There's tips and advice.
A lot of people print it out. Yep.
Yeah. And it was just like, I've never seen anything like it. It's really, it's much more than just a type form kind of, you know, you got a score, and it feels it's another value add, rather than you feeling like, well, you kind of like, I know why you want to know these answers. It actually feels like you gain something really valuable, that's personal and bespoke.
Yeah, because now you've got the book, and in many cases, when people come and see us face to face, back when that was a thing, back in my day, we used to go and meet face to face. That people will often turn up with a copy of the book, and they'll have their printed report, and they'll actually have the book and the report, and they'll sit down and talk to us, and they'll have their highlighted, underlined pieces of the book that they were reading, and they'll actually have the report that they want to talk about.
Really personal to them. And like from the opposite side, from what you can see in the background from the sales side, as you were saying earlier, you can just pinpoint with accuracy where their pain is, where their need is.
Yep. And we don't have to talk about anything that's not needed to talk about. We can just jump straight into, what do you want to do about this, this, and this?
Yeah.
Especially my book, 24 Assets. You know, there's 24 things we could be talking about, but the scorecard actually highlights the top 4 or 5 things we should be talking about. And immediately we're having a really relevant conversation with someone.
Yeah. And it's great. I mean, I think the scorecard's awesome. We've not finished ours yet. I need to tell on myself.
Watch what happens.
Yeah. We've not quite finished ours, but I've seen the software now playing behind the scenes. It's so easy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing the software does is when people score high or low on certain questions, it's now writing an email specifically about that question. So let's say you've got a meditation scorecard, and it says, do you meditate every day? And it says, no. And it's like, it automatically triggers an email that says, here's why it's really important to meditate every day for at least 20 days. And it says, would you be willing to take a meditate every day challenge? Now, let's say someone says, yes, I do meditate every day. Well, then it would be weird to get that offer, because it's like, I already meditate every day, so I don't want to take a meditate every day challenge. But what you could do is set it up to send an email that says, because you're one of the very few people who meditates every day, we want to invite you to an advanced meditation
that's
retreat.
So cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I want to keep this short. I don't like, it's people's lunchtime on a Friday, so I was thinking half an hour. We've got 4 minutes, and I'm just seeing, I don't think we've had any more questions in the comments. We've got quite a few people watching. Oh, hang on, we have got some questions. Graham Keane,
good.
How do you find 1,000 people a month to send the book to? That's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Just standing out the front of the Royal Albert Hall and handing them out. It's like, well, if you can afford to go to the Royal Albert Hall, you must be the right type of person. We use a combination of Facebook ads targeted around people who describe themselves as entrepreneur, business leader, managing director, founder. So we target people based on job title. We have some ads that run on Google. We have some ads that run on LinkedIn. We use content. So we have a very active YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel invites people, would you like a copy of the book? As a call to action. I personally get invited to go onto podcasts like today, right? And when at the end of the podcast, they typically say, how should people get in touch? And I say, why don't you email our office and we'll send you a free copy of the book. So info@dent.global, if you want to, info@dent.global, and just say, I'd like a copy of the book, and send us your address, and we'll send you out a copy of the book.
That's awesome.
So straight away, people, if I go on a decent podcast, we might get 20, 30, 40 people who email our office straight away and say, could I get a copy of the book? So in a lot of different ways, but probably the most common way is just Facebook ads.
Oh, great.
The
And
most,
Akash has said in the comments, Scorecard is a game changer. So Akash Vaghela's book, Transform Your Body, Transform Your Life, he's on sale now, by the way, everybody listening. So
brilliant.
go and buy it, go and pre-order it. It'll be available very soon, but it's ready for pre-order. That's phenomenal. But yeah, Akash said it's a game changer, and I think it really is. And Akash's book is obviously fitness, so it's a really good kind of example of what you were saying, Daniel. So I'm looking through anybody else here. Yeah, so lots of people saying there the coffee is a really good analogy. Yeah, it is. That's kind of so easy just to remember, isn't it?
And it's funny because we wish we could scale our time. A lot of people say, oh, I wish I had more time. And well, there are only probably 5 coffee meetings you could have in a day if you really crammed your day full of meetings, maybe 6 or 7. But there's no limit to the number of books you can send out. So suddenly, let's say you start sending out 10 books a day. Well, now you've almost you've freed up your time from not having to go meet people, but B, you're actually meeting, quote unquote, meeting twice as many people that you could physically meet even if you could. So now you're kind of getting this additional leverage of meeting 10 people a day, even though you couldn't meet 10 people a day, and you're not even spending the time doing it. So it's just that kind of like, for me, it's that magic moment where you realize that time is unlimited. You realize that there are ways to genuinely leverage your time, and having a book is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Mason has put in the comments as well. His book's really niche. If you remember, it's the Will It Stand Up
Will
book.
It Stand
Daniel,
Up?
you came with that great title. It's made hundreds of thousands of pounds because of Derek's business and the level of project.
He only needs to win, 10 projects, and that's probably 7 figures worth of revenue. So his book, the fact that he was involved in the Sydney Olympic Stadium, he's setting that out, and it's like, wow, the guy who's going to be working on our project was involved in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So I bet his clients take real pride. I bet they show other people. They say, oh, this is our engineer. This is the person who's going to work on our project.
So yeah, I mean,
and
Mary is
also
also.
You could actually have an engineering project scorecard. So you could actually, and one thing we do is we have bookmarks, and the bookmark says, to get the most out of this book, take the scorecard, and that's always inserted into the book. So you could do the same with Derek's book, Will It Stand Up? Take the Will It Stand Up engineering project scorecard in order to test whether your project is on track to success or off track. Take the scorecard.
Yeah, awesome. Mary has also said, but it sounds like having a really good sales process behind the book is important as well. And I'd agree it is, depending on what you're selling.
Well, you need 2 things. This technique doesn't really work if you're selling something very low cost. So if you're selling £30 £30 online courses, you should probably just have an ad for the online course. If you're giving away 1,000 books and the upside is someone spends £250, I think there's probably a threshold around £2,500. You need to be selling something that's worth more than a few £1,000s. Like if winning a new client is worth thousands of pounds, then giving away the books is worth it. And if winning a new client is worth hundreds of pounds, then probably it's not the best strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's all about, I was lucky enough to go on your Get Leads workshop. It's about getting that acceptable cost per acquisition right, by knowing, what your margin is.
We always work on about 15% as the upper limit of the acceptable cost per acquisition. So if you've got a £10,000 client package, you've got up to £1,500, preferably below that, but up to £1,500 is probably where it's still affordable. It hasn't crossed over to being unaffordable. And then when you think about £1,500, it's like, okay, if I sent out £500 worth of books, that's probably 100 books. I only need one person. If I'm sending 100 well-selected things, one person has to come and do a project with me, and it's only £500, and I've still got £1,000 to run. Yeah. So realistically, you could send up to 300 books, and you'd still be within your customer acquisition.
Brilliant. And also, you've got all those books out there then selling to you, whoever knows who, when they get passed along.
And Joe, this is one thing we've actually noticed of having done this for many years. There's I'm about to use a term I shouldn't use. There's a second wave. Right. So there's a second wave of book people buying. So basically, what you do is if I sent out 1,000 books today, within 3 months there would be clients coming in and saying, "Yeah, I read the book and I'm ready to go." And then strangely, a year from now, there would actually be 2 or 3 clients who just come in, and I go, "Well, how did you find me?" It's like, "Well, a year ago you sent me a book. I never got around to reading it. I just read it." Or, "A year ago you sent me the book and I went away and did some stuff as a result of reading it. And then I saw the book in my bookshelf and I thought, I want to work with them, but I never got around to it." So there's always this kind of like initial, you do win an initial client, and then randomly you'll end up with another client.
That
The other
makes
day,
perfect sense.
the other day I did a sales call, and we had about 20 people on the call, and I said, "How's everyone heard about this Zoom call?" About half the people said, "Well, in the last couple of weeks, I saw you online and I saw your videos and I ordered the book and I'm now on the Zoom call." And then about half the people said, "Oh, I've been following you for a couple of years. I've read the book. I've been listening to podcasts." And then there's this kind of second wind that you
Yeah,
get.
that's great. Yeah, because it's still been doing the sales job. It's sitting there with them in their house or in their office,
Yeah.
waiting to kind of say, look at me. And then, like, if there's other stuff going on, they say, oh, they connect all the dots and go, "I've got the book here from this guy. I've just seen him on YouTube." Everything starts to connect then. And then
It
there's, "Oh, I
starts to
didn't do the
work.
scorecard. I'll do it now." Um,
It's
Akash has said he's had 300 scorecards taken last month, which is awesome. That's
That's
300
awesome.
leads, not just leads, but like
Yeah.
super qualified.
Yeah, well, you got to think about it. That person who's filling in that scorecard, 300 sounds like a big number, but even just one person filling in a scorecard, that's a person who's very interested in getting the result. They're really wanting to engage.
Yeah, that's great. And Derek's asked another question. I'm going to potentially have a little go at answering this as well, but I'd like your thoughts. So Derek said, "Is doing speaking engagements a good way to promote my book?" I'd flip it round, Derek. I think actually your book is a good way to get speaking engagements. And if you send it out and like directly target, and the book I'm writing at the moment is about the opportunities, directly target podcast hosts, Facebook group hosts, um, speaker bookers, whoever they are and wherever they are, event organizers. If you actually send out proactively and have a campaign with a follower and a letter, that will get you more speaking engagements, which I think would be a better way to think of it than, can I use that to promote the book?
Yeah, I think both. Whenever I have a speaking engagement, I always give away copies in the room. So remember, I try and give away 1,000 a month. So if I'm speaking in front of 100 people, I will normally bring 100 books and give them all away on the day. And Derek, if you're speaking, you're obviously, Derek would only be speaking to the right type of audience anyway. So take with you 100 books and put them in people's hands.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then you win the best speaker of the day as well.
Yeah, because who doesn't love a gift? Just
Yeah.
a pure gift with no ask in return.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think we're kind of at time now. Is there anything else you want to say, or where should we direct people? I know you gave an email address where they can request a copy of the
Oh,
book.
if people want the book, info@dent.global. You can get the book, send us through your mailing address. Or if you want to take the scorecard, do a search online, Key Person of Influence scorecard. Or 24assets.com has another scorecard if you want to see 2 scorecards. If you want to check out the scorecard business, it's scoreapp.com. And yeah, follow me on all the social medias. I share anything that I find that's useful on Twitter or Facebook or any of those sorts of things.
Brilliant. Thanks, Daniel. I'll put all those links in the comments as well in the live so everybody can just click them. That's brilliant. Thanks, Daniel.
Excellent. Cheers,
Really
Derek.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye, everyone.